the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome into the latest edition of the Spot Track Podcast. Brandon Kravitz here, along with the money man, Mike Ginnitti. Much to get to today. NFL schedules are out. We're going to go record predictions team by team here now that we know the layout. This episode brought to you by Bettor Edge, our go-to social sports betting platform, offering better prices, softer lines, daily contests, weekly competitions. Eliminate the VIG and put the power back in your hands. It's a smart financial thing to do. And you get $20 on the house if you've never used the app before. Just sign up with the promo code SPOTTRACK, also at bettoredge.com. Mike, I am still rummaging through the schedule releases. I'm starting to hand out star grades based on the social media videos that have been posted, making sense of it all as much as I can. A lot of these teams take themselves very seriously. Some long videos. I didn't realize this would be a part-time job trying to figure out what all of these release videos look like. But any major takeaways as we get another little bite at the apple for the NFL?
Yeah, no kidding, right? They can turn a pile of you-know-what into wine at this point in time, and we would all just sit there drinking it. The release videos are one of my favorite parts of the entire season. The ramp up to schedule day, by the way, one of my least favorite ramp ups that come with the NFL schedule. But man, those videos are just outstanding, and to the degree where I think we should start like handing out legitimate awards for them, because the amount of time and effort and creativity that go into them it's exceptional stuff. So the Chargers did it again. I thought what the Jets did this year was pretty damn cool in terms of some of their collaboration work. Good stuff. I know we're going to talk schedules themselves here in a second, but it's just to me, this is like the most glaring, obviously stark point that this league is undefeated. And maybe in terms of the entire world at this point, this league is truly undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they can turn chicken scratch into chicken salad with the snap of their finger, and it just seems like this thing gets bigger every single year. My afternoon show goes live at 3 p.m. in Orlando, and I don't know why I had it in my head. I don't know if this changed or if I just forgot, because this is not the most significant day in the NFL calendar. I thought I was going to be able to sit down yesterday and have the full spread of schedules. I had it planned to open my show just combing through raw reactions to everything, but no. The NFL waits until prime time to make this an entire show. It's just incredible. So, yeah, is that something? Am I misremembering how this has happened in the past? Has this always been a primetime release? Maybe I'm used to trade deadlines, because usually you get like that 3-4 p.m. deadline. I'm used to these things dropping in the middle of the day, but
I guess you're right, because I remember these release videos coming out throughout the afternoon where we could watch them into the night. So I guess I don't know for sure. It's all kind of a blur at this point, but you can understand why they wanted to make this primetime. And by the way, as you opened your show at 3, you were definitely sifting through a lot of incorrect guesses, right? Which is what I was trying to avoid. There were a lot of leaks. Yeah. Oh my God, just avoid, just stay away, because so much of it ended up being wrong.
So when I start to dig in, I think you got a lot of people that probably take this very seriously, but whether you're a sports fan that likes to travel to games, or you're trying to pick out which ones you're going to go to, you're a sports bettor, you're trying to figure out angles early on in the season. Okay, I like this spot in week 7, whatever it is. There's some people that take this very seriously. There are others that look at this and go, why does this even matter? And I understand that thought process. The first things that I look at is, how do you start your longest road trip? How do you finish? And where's your bye week? And I think outside of that, I mean, every schedule to some degree is the same,
It is. And we know that the opponents, and we know where, we can sort of piece this thing together for the most part in December and sort of understand, what I always think about, because I'm weird and I think from a different side of most of these things. Do you think like the airlines and the hotels and everybody gets a little heads up here so they can jack prices accordingly based on how this schedule is going to lay out? Because I would imagine there's a significant bump and boost immediately after this thing releases, and there's a big Monday Night Football game coming to your neck of the woods and things like that. So I wonder just how far reaching, not to mention, by the way, Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers getting some primetime love here without Aaron Rodgers actually being on the Steelers. So I just wonder how much of the actual unknown becomes known behind the scenes that we don't know about.
I can't see the NFL tipping their hand to Southwest or American Airlines, but if you're an executive or you're in charge of pricing, whatever job that entails, I would think you're paying attention to that night for exactly that reason.
Yeah.
But hey, the sharp travelers out there, you can beat the surge in pricing. That's a smart way to go. Now, before we move on, because we do have some contracts to talk about, the NFL, I think, does say a lot with who they put in prime time. The Chiefs, they have declared, no surprise, are the most important team in the NFL. They have 7 primetime games. The Cowboys have 6. That's the strongest brand for whatever reason in the league. And then this one confuses me. There are about 4 or 5 teams tied with 5 primetime games. The Falcons and the Dolphins are on that list. Yeah. They got the Commanders too. I get that. Jaden Daniels is a sensational player, and they are really banking with all of the standalone games the Commanders have that they are going to be even better than they were a year ago. What am I missing with the Dolphins and the Falcons to have as many primetime games as they have? I don't get it.
It's a tough one. And the Dolphins one, to me, is the more interesting one here. I understand that, somebody out of that NFC South probably had to get a little love, and Tampa Bay got a little bit of it, and probably should be the breadwinner. I think there's something to kind of trying to pick out who's going to be this year's big rookie star or rookie contract star. And it seems as though Michael Penix Jr. has the keys, at least the driver's seat, to become that player. And oh, by the way, the Kirk Cousins stuff and all that is somewhat fascinating if there's a bit of a back and forth there. So, the team as a whole has improved, but that division just, I guess, needed a little bit of love. So Miami, though, just seems to be a sinking ship. And maybe I'm reading that incorrectly. I haven't yet looked at the hard data on the gambling sites, but in terms of the roster construction, they seem to be going down, not up, even though they have some polarizing situations. I think a coach who's maybe on the hottest seat in the league right now. Certainly the quarterback is polarizing, but I don't understand why you choose Miami over New England is my point with that one, because having gone back to my original point, why wouldn't the league be throwing Drake May to the fire here a little bit, knowing what we know about him and knowing just how much they've ramped up? And oh, by the way, the Vrabel stuff. And then, oh, by the way, just how polarizing the Belichick stuff remains and is going to remain. So I'm a little shocked that New England didn't get a lot of love just by default, and that the Dolphins sort of stole some of that thunder. But other than that, yeah, Chiefs and Cowboys, that's going to pay the bills. You know how that works.
And it's dangerous that the NFL put 2 of those primetime games late in the season when you can't even trust Tua to stay healthy. Those could be some ugly games. They have the Steelers and the Bengals. The Bengals one could end up getting flexed out because that's on Sunday night. Last thing on this, how about the lack of buzz for the number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward? 0 primetime games for the Titans. I didn't even know that was allowed. I thought you had to have at least one random Thursday night game thrown in there. But
the Bills got 2 Thursday games, I noticed, and I think that's the one they stole. They just took it away from Tennessee.
I mean, it's crazy that it's not like Cam Ward isn't an exciting player, but he was buried in the headlines when it came to the draft. And I thought that was more of a Shedeur Sanders thing because he was such a polarizing prospect and Cam Ward was such an obvious number 1 overall. So that's why you don't discuss it, because what's the discussion? It's kind of like Cooper Flagg to the Dallas Mavericks. There's not going to be much debate about what goes on draft night, but this has now carried over into the schedule. The league is saying, no, Tennessee and your new quarterback, you bore us.
I'm going to zag, Brandon, and say that the league is protecting Cam Ward a little bit here, because we all understand what's happening there. And they decided to take the quarterback, and I think the league is admitting out loud, hey, you probably shouldn't have taken the quarterback because you're 7 other primary positions away from being ready to compete, and you're kind of doing this backwards. So we're gonna, obviously you're gonna do what you're gonna do, but we're not gonna promote this, and we're gonna try to make sure that this kid's not at the forefront of our league, our week to week, and maybe he can slowly develop behind the scenes a little bit better this way. So I'm going to say it's a bit of a hat tip to how Tennessee's operating right now, and hopefully he can exceed our expectations, because I think he is a pretty darn good player on the surface, but he's going to need some extra work with that Tennessee roster right now.
I like that mentality of we don't like your roster management, so we're docking you primetime games. All right, let's dig into some contracts. Derrick Henry signed a 2-year, $30 million extension at 31 years old. Is this deal historic in its nature because of the age of Derrick Henry?
Yeah, I wish I had the actual numbers here, but I'm just kind of floating off some of the reports. So this is kind of exactly what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, which was it's a one size fits all extension. Obviously, this guy can still play football at an extremely high level despite being 31. And he will be 32 within this contract based on the guarantee structure. So that's unprecedented territory. Generally speaking, I went through way too much data last night trying to unpack even the Adrian Petersons and the LaDainian Tomlinsons of the world who, certainly stayed their welcome. Emmitt Smith played into his mid-30s way back in the day, in a much different era. But this is right up there. Even when you include inflation and all that, it sounds like Henry's going to make about $14 million this year. That's the number to beat, because Adrian Peterson earned $13 million about 10 years ago on his deal from Minnesota at age 31. And then going forward, he's guaranteed $25 million over the next 2 years. That's also ties Peterson there in terms of the 2-year guarantee for a 30+ running back. So it's all deserved. It's all warranted. I imagine it lowers his cap hit this year, which is going to help Baltimore a little bit. I imagine they bring in a brand new set of performance incentives that certainly will motivate Henry to remain the player that he's been. And boy, this Baltimore schedule looks really, really good. It's one of those teams that I think everybody's going to be talking about for the next few months here in terms of gambling, because they're set up with a barn burner Sunday Night Football and Buffalo to start, but then it gets really nice for them. So this offense, if it can kind of remain and even add to a little bit here, boy, this might be the team to watch here for 2025.
Yeah, they have a fascinating first month of the season. Bills, Browns, Lions, right. Chiefs is the way that they get started. But it does ease up for them after that. I was looking at the age 30 season for Adrian Peterson. He ran for almost 1,500 yards, had 11 touchdowns on the year. And then I believe when you went back, it was after that 2015 season is when he signed his big deal.
Yeah, that's right. And then there was the injury, and then obviously the off-field stuff that kicked in not too far up after that. But Henry's got a chance here to become, top 3 all time in terms of how we perceive things, because he's just not slowing down. He's just the LeBron James of the NFL at this position, and that's it's been pretty incredible. So a much, much warranted extension, but to me, just a no-brainer, and we'll see where they go from here.
There are a lot of similarities too in terms of the build, the play style with Adrian Peterson.
But you're going to say LeBron.
Well, in a way, yes. So I can actually tie both of those in together, because I don't know what Adrian Peterson's workout regimen was. Derrick Henry's is well documented. I'm sure that he took great care of himself, but both Derrick Henry and Adrian Peterson are fortunate enough to benefit from some incredible genetics. They are just built different. They are two of the most uniquely built running backs I've ever seen in my life. And it felt like Adrian Peterson, because of the way that just his frame, that he was going to be able to run forever as long as his body held up. The difference is that character-wise, doesn't seem like Adrian Peterson was a very good dude. And I do think that being a good person, it has a tendency to trickle into other aspects of your life, like taking care of your body and eating right and doing the right things day to day. Yeah. Derrick Henry, I don't worry about any of that. So not only does he have the genetics, and then also he puts the money into his body in the way that LeBron James does, and takes care of himself, and I think goes about his business the right way. Yeah. Him playing until he's 35, 36 and still being prime Derrick Henry, I don't think that's outside of the realm of reality here, I guess, is the point that I'm trying to make.
And I don't want to crap on this too much because it's been a while, but I just want the world to remember that Jerry Jones publicly said that Derrick Henry was not worth paying $9 million for last year. He said it out loud on a radio show in front of a microphone on a live audience. He said that out loud. It's one of the biggest mistakes he's made for that franchise over the past decade, because who knows what that Dallas Cowboys would have looked like last year if Derrick Henry was running that offense, which is what he's doing on an offense in Baltimore that is supposed to be, focused on Lamar Jackson. He has completely taken the focus off of Lamar Jackson, which is impossible to do. So certainly he's worth 9, and now he's worth at least 13 over the next 2 per year. So it's a great story.
There's a strong bump in pay from the $7 million he was set to make, but is this a deal that the Ravens needed to strike, or are they in some ways saying, hey, thanks for being a worthy investment a year ago? Because I don't know that they needed to get up to the level where they're paying him in terms of overall guarantees. I would think that they could have settled in at a few million less. So do you think that this was the amount of it reflects the level of respect they have for Derrick Henry?
A couple things. Some sort of sweetener had to happen. You can't enter even training camp with the world knowing that Derrick Henry is about to make $7 million. That's just highway robbery. It's blasphemy. They've got too many of those nickel and dime stories attached to Baltimore, both from football and baseball standpoint. So they had to write that wrong.
Different story.
Yeah, we'll get there, I think, at the back end of the show. But so you had to fix that immediately somehow. And I think they just looked around the room and said, he's going to be our running back next year anyway. He doesn't have a contract next year. Let's just do this. Let's make this right. And then the final nail in the coffin here with how we got to the numbers is Saquon Barkley, right? So again, we'll go back to Howie Roseman and what he continues to do in Philadelphia. But not only did he do right for his own team in terms of putting the story out there, getting the money in front of Saquon Barkley, who's 3 years younger, and there should be absolutely no concern with inflating the salary of Barkley for the next couple of seasons. But he put the pressure immediately on the Baltimore Ravens to have to do something much more significant than they probably planned on doing even in February. So this came from a bunch of angles, and it landed on a great spot for Henry going forward.
Now, as far as the position itself, are we seeing the position as a whole? It sounds like the answer would be yes, based on what's happening at the top, gaining some steam with deals like this. I mean, there's still so much room for improvement. I was looking at Derrick Henry's deal and trying to compare that to where that would rank among wide receivers. And he's saying, like, no, I know that I shouldn't do this to myself because I am the running back truther. But he's like in Cortland Sutton range, which is, it's hard to even say that out loud.
Yeah. No, they're attached at the hip to the tight end, which is not a good thing. Okay. But that's exactly, financially speaking, where the running back position lives right now. And both of those have taken a little bit of a jump over the past 18 to 24 months in terms of resetting the top of the market a little bit here. So I flippantly put out the running backs are back tweet, which was more for you than the general public because
I was quick
how loaded with sarcasm.
That while you were before you even hit the post button.
Yeah. So obviously a little bit of sarcasm, and here's all you need to know, in terms of where things have gone. We're talking, the comparison we're making to Derrick Henry's extension is Adrian Peterson, which is 11 years ago, right? And I mentioned Emmitt Smith in this conversation today, which was 22 years ago. So it's not great that Derrick Henry's numbers are resembling Adrian Peterson's 2015 numbers, and we're not even adjusting for any of the inflation yet, right? So it hasn't gone well. Is it going to get better? It has to. The league cap is going up significantly. The position has somewhat cyclically come back into vogue a little bit for a lot of reasons, mostly because the position has flexed. It's become a much more versatile entity where everybody's catching passes. All of the top running backs are pass protection wizards, right? Barkley, these guys we're talking about here. So they're doing everything. They're doing enough to warrant much more money. And layer on top of that, Bijan looks good. Gibbs looks good. And if Genty and a couple of these other guys that were just drafted hit over the next 3 years, there's going to be constant resetting the market opportunity. So we're definitely in a situation where things are going to continue to develop, but we're nowhere near where this position should be, in my opinion, based on the performance of the production it's putting out there.
Yes. And I think when you think about the cyclical nature of it too, a lot of the position was devalued, and then so the better running backs slipped to later in the draft. Who's picking later in the draft? The good teams. So those running backs are going to look even better on good teams. And then you have free agent running backs that bad teams don't want to pay because it doesn't help them to have a good running back. So where do they go? They go to the good teams like Saquon, and goes to the Eagles, and Derrick Henry goes to the Ravens. Then they look amazing again because they're on good teams, and it rises the level of the position. And I think where we have removed ourselves in this position is that what you don't have anymore is the bad team that is lifted by the good running back. That's like just not a thing. Like Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry was Adrian that for a decade. Yeah.
How bad were the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah.
They had Christian Ponder. They were winning games because they handed the ball off to Adrian Peterson. Like, you just can't do that anymore. That's why I worry about Ashton Ginnitti out of the gate.
Can I make one more point here that I think maybe gets swept under the rug a little bit in terms of how this running back has come back into focus? I think a big part of it is that the quarterback position has become much more versatile. We had some players in this market back in the day, the Cunninghams, certainly the Steve Youngs, and then into the more recent, the RG3s and whatnot. But it's a real thing in this league, right? And to the point of now where most offenses are not pocket offenses. Something's going to happen where the pocket's going to collapse. We're getting outside of things, and the offensive lines are having to be instructed, taught, and prepared for chaos, for breakdowns, which makes the running game the stable part of the offense, right? So now you're balancing chaos in the passing game with a structured fastball down the middle in terms of a baseball analogy, right? And I do think that's helping these backs hit more home runs, average 5-6 yards a carry, and just become bigger parts of the offense. So the Mahomes of the world, the Josh Allens of the world, the Lamars of the world, and that the fact that we've got a dozen of them, not just one or two, has really rounded this running game into form, thus making them more valuable and giving them more reasons to get more pot sweeteners like we're seeing with Henry. Yes,
I think everything that you just said just screams in big, bold lettering James Cook and what he provides to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the other side of the ball. Trey Hendrickson is now drawing a hard line in the sand when it comes to his contract. He met with the media, said that he was very disappointed in the communication with management, and that this has now become personal. This feels very Cincinnati. Where does this go from here?
Man, I didn't like what I saw from that head coach text. I can tell you that. I hope that's being taken out of context a little bit, and that the head coach specifically isn't saying, we're disappointed that things are going this way, because that's a bunch of BS. This is business. This is a big business, right? They're making millions of dollars off a schedule release. That's how big a business this is. All right. So a guy who has 40 some sacks over the past 2.5 years, who's crying for a little bit more money because he's 38th on the edge rusher list right now, despite the fact that he's in the twilight years of his career. All right, this is 100% warranted. And in fact, most people who give a damn about this stuff think Hendrickson should have held out significantly last offseason and not let it get to this point in the first place. So there's a little bit of user error there, in my opinion, between the agent and the player. Sort of not letting it, especially knowing what happened with that Bengals at least start of 2024. It was the perfect scenario for him to not be around. All right. And to sort of put his foot down. But now it's a year later. He's a year older. It's much more complicated. But as I tweeted out this week, there's a lot of things on his side right now. One of them being this Myles Garrett contract, which is explosive, but it was put in place to quiet a trade demand, to quiet an unruly franchise for obviously other reasons. But they decided that this guy was one of the reasons, Myles Garrett, that people were going to come to Cleveland Browns games this year. Now, I get it. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow. There are people in line ahead of Trey Hendrickson, but not on the defensive side of the ball. There's just not. And despite the fact that he's 30 going on 31 here, he is the linchpin of this defense, as Myles Garrett is to Cleveland. It doesn't have to look like the gaudy, gigantic market resetting numbers that Myles Garrett got to. But some truncated, prorated version of that is all I'd be saying right now if I'm Trey Hendrickson, especially now that they've dragged their feet so long and pulled themselves back into where the Bengals always get to, which is, the very, very final line possible. They did well. They did right by Chase. I thought they did very fair by T. Higgins. The foundation for Hendrickson is very fair, which in my opinion starts at 2 for $60. All right. It's double what we're talking about here with this Derrick Henry pot sweetener for a player at the same age at a position that is somewhat slightly more important, right? The edge rusher position for the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a very hard schedule coming up here. So it's a 2 for $60 to start. Most of that's going to be guaranteed. I laid out the structure of Garrett's next 3 years, which is 3 for $100, about $57 million over the next 2. Why can't that just become the contract? Rip up the $16 million he's owed this year, give him a 3 for $100, where about 60 of that is fully guaranteed over the next 2 seasons, and let him go out there and get 15 sacks a year for the next 2 years, because that's all he wants to do is just shut up and play football, and you've got to pay him accordingly. And that's the number, in my opinion. Garrett set the number. So let's just get out of here and do it.
And value is relative, and relative to what else Cincinnati is throwing out there defensively, they have to pay this guy.
At this stage in the game, it's too late now, right? Are you really caring about a 2026 second round pick at this point in time? You shouldn't be, because that should be the last thing in your mind right now. So you're right. This is about 2025.
Yeah, they cannot roll out a defense as bad. The defense and the kicking, major issue last year, and you are going to waste away the limited time you have with Joe Burrow as your star quarterback. Let's get to our quick hits to wrap today's episode. You can take a little time on this one if you need to, because it is a loaded question here. Which of these 3 teams is set to have the most dramatic offseason? 2 of them in the NBA have already been eliminated from the playoffs. The Warriors just last night, the Cavs a couple of nights ago, and the percentages would tell you that the Celtics are about to get ousted as well, although see a little bit of life there in green and white. But Warriors, Cavs, Celtics, which has the most dramatic offseason?
That Celtics win is just the league making sure that this thing gets to 7. Don't worry about that one.
Listen, Mike, let me say something as confidently as I've ever said it. If this gets to 7, the Knicks are not advancing.
I agree with you.
End of story.
I 100% agree with you. So Friday is just could not be a bigger game. And I think it might become part of our, never mind. You're going Denver, OKC, I see, with our Bettor Edge of the week. Well, we went at the zag on that, Brandon. This Friday Knicks game is just way too big. Look, I think the Warriors already made their move for the offseason, and that's Jimmy Butler. So unless Steph Curry is going to ruffle some feathers here and really start to contemplate his future, which I don't think he needs to just yet, I expect that team to run it back pretty much piece by piece. And outside of something weird with, maybe DeAndre Hunter not really fitting, despite the small sample size that, coming over at the trade deadline, I like most of what we've seen from the Cavs, and they just have to become a better coach team, in my opinion. And that's ridiculous to say because Kenny Atkinson just won Coach of the Year. But they've got to figure out how to properly use Mobley and Allen as twin towers. But because I do think that is what sets them apart from most of this regular season and most of the postseason. But it got a little sloppy there when Mobley got hurt. And obviously the Mitchell injury was the biggest issue here, and the Garland injury to start the series. So I'm not screaming fire with really too many of these rosters. The Celtics are going to be the one to talk about because of the Tatum situation and just how long his absence could change things. And I'm going to wait for Keith Smith to come on the show, Brandon, and really dissect this, because not only is he an NBA expert, the Celtics are his team. He grew up on the Celtics blog and doing all this thing. So he's going to have a better pulse of just how crazy things could get in terms of, the removal of Porzingis or Horford or whatever pieces might fall off here. But I think for the most part, my estimation would be that most of these 3 rosters look pretty darn similar, at least starting 2025-26, and then we'll see where we go from there.
It's hard to believe, because when seasons end the way that 2 of these have, and one of these could, for the win now nature of these organizations, it'd be kind of hard to believe. And the Cavs they're going to lose some pieces to free agency. The fans are furious with Darius Garland. I wonder if some pressure gets put on them there. Yeah, I think the Magic could use a Darius Garland. Maybe I need to call the front office. All right, let's move on. Now that Pete Rose has been exonerated by Major League Baseball, Will he enter the Hall of Fame in the next voting cycle? The ballots start to rain in about 6 months.
So I think he's eligible 2027 from what I read. December 2027 is when his name will officially become eligible. And there's like an 8-person committee or something, right? In terms of the older generations of baseball that get voted in. He's getting in. I'm going to start with that. He's getting in, but it might take a couple cycles, just because of the minutia, because he never really played ball. You know, he's been Roger Clemens in this thing for his entire life.
But he's dead. Like it's
right.
It's not
that's
like
right.
Holding it over his head any longer than it already has been seems a little bit gratuitous to me.
There are few things more petty than the baseball writers and the baseball committees attached to this thing. And there are plenty of great players out there that I think would attest to that going forward. So I do think there'll be a little bit of a waiting game to the degree that maybe Shoeless Joe gets in before him, which I can't even believe we're talking about this stuff, but I guess there's not direct evidence that Shoeless Joe did what he did. And from what I've heard from some pretty great people, there's a Brinks truck of evidence that Pete Rose not only bet on baseball, but bet on his own Reds as he managed them going forward, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. He gets in, but it might take a minute. That's all I'm saying.
Have you ever looked at Shoeless Joe Jackson's stats from the 1919 World Series, by the way?
Just the best.
And this is the guy we're saying was I wasn't alive then, okay?
But are you saying he definitely did this?
I'm saying he might have taken the money, but he batted .345 with 19 hits, a home run, 8 RBI, 9 runs scored.
All of the books and the movies say that he was the one trying to buck the trend. That's all I'm saying, right? So put him in.
Come on. And he did it without shoes on, I think. No, that doesn't check out. Bud Black and Derek Shelton have already been sent packing from the Rockies and the Pirates. 25 games in. I don't know what those organizations thought they were going to see in the first 25, but here we are. Who's going to be next? The next manager to get the axe in Major League Baseball.
Let me pull up the standings before I speak out loud here.
Just say Brandon Hyde.
It is Brandon Hyde. It is the Orioles situation because somebody has to take the fall for the front office, not fully coming together this offseason. And I think they thought they had their Corbin Burns extension and it didn't go that way. So somebody's going to take the fall there if that team continues to slip. They're currently 11 games under 500. That ain't going to work. 9 games under 500 right now. That's not going to fly in the basement behind even Tampa Bay. I'm going to give you another one because they're okay right now. They're 500 team, 21-21, but it's that same division. I'm watching Toronto closely because they have now backed Vladdy Jr., financially speaking, in a big, big way. And they've got some other sizable contracts on that roster that basically say they've got to go forwards, not backwards here. If they start to fall out of contention, I think John Schneider is going to be an in-season firing because they're going to want to get ahead of this offseason because there are bigger fish to fry. They want to secure another big fish to go with Vlad Jr. over this offseason. There are going to be opportunities to do that. So I'm staying in this division for both these conversations because, quite frankly, the two that I thought should go have already gone, and we'll see what happens after that.
Well, the Blue Jays are in second place right now, but the expectations are high with that payroll. All right, let's get to our Bettor Edge bet of the week. I did lay out Nuggets plus 4.5 at home in game 6 against OKC because that's the game tonight. But if you would rather fast forward to Friday night, game 6 at MSG, the New York Knicks, a 2.5-point favorite against the Boston Celtics. I'm fine with that. I am pretty confident on my side when it comes to really both of these games, but even more so on Friday night. I like the Celtics.
So you want to put them together?
I'll take the dogs. I want the 2 underdogs. I like the Nuggets plus 4.5 and the Celtics plus 2.5.
I mean, if you're giving me 2 favorites, I'm going to have to take that, right? Let's do this. I love it. Man, couldn't have set up nicer for a little weekend series here for the NBA. What a playoff so far after what was a terrible first couple rounds last year. I can remember that out loud. So good on the league for getting this right this year somehow.
Hey, we should all hope that I'm right here because then we get 2 game 7s.
Heck yeah. No doubt about it.
Let's do that. This episode has been presented by Bettor Edge. Sign up, try it out, bet with your friends, and use the promo code SPOTTRACK over at bettoredge.com or on the mobile app. $20 at sign up if you do. Do us a favor, subscribe and rate the pod that you're enjoying right now, and make sure to visit SPOTTRACK.com for all of the latest in the sports contractual world. Till next time, Mike.